The unfair gift divide is something that lingers far beyond the ribbons and wrapping paper of a festive morning. On Christmas Day, every family member waits with equal anticipation, eager to see what lies beneath the glossy paper and bows. But the difference between what each person receives has the power to shape more than just the moment. It can plant seeds of resentment, spark rivalries, and leave a lasting impression that goes beyond the value of the gift itself. For me, it began with something that looked innocent at first glance. A small, neatly wrapped package light in my hands, while my sister's gift had to be wheeled out into the driveway because it was too large to fit beneath the tree. The sight of her face lighting up as she discovered a brand new car will always remain burned in my memory. The shine of the paint, the gleam of the chrome, the way the keys dangled from her hand like a crown of victory. She had been given mobility, freedom, a symbol of success and status. I, on the other hand, had been given a mug. The mug itself wasn't just an ordinary mug. It was printed with words that cut deeper than most backhanded comments ever could. I peeked in the womb. A phrase so sharp, so mocking, it carried the weight of an insult wrapped in humor. While my sister's car represented growth, independence, and opportunity, my mug seemed to declare stagnation, mediocrity, and a reminder that my best years were supposedly behind me before I had even taken my first breath. The contrast was staggering. To one child, a gift that promised a future; to the other, a reminder of futility. That moment didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a judgment, a ruling, a declaration of who mattered more. What makes the unfair gift divide so powerful is not just the difference in cost, but the difference in meaning. Gifts, whether we admit it or not, are symbols of how we are seen and valued. To my sister, the car said, "You are ready for the world, you are responsible, you are worth investing in." To me, the mug said, "You are a joke, your story is already over, and you are worth little more than ceramic and sarcasm." In a family gathering that was supposed to be about unity, joy, and warmth, the disparity between those two gifts carved a crack into the room that could not be ignored. Even as laughter echoed and cameras flashed, I sat holding the mug in my hand, staring at the cruel words, while the rest of the family fawned over the gleaming car parked outside. It's in moments like these that sibling dynamics reveal themselves. Growing up, the divide between siblings is often subtle: grades, talents, approval, or attention. But sometimes it all comes to the surface in a single instant, crystal clear and undeniable. The Christmas morning I held that mug was one of those moments. I could almost feel the invisible scoreboard lighting up, tallying victories and defeats. My sister's gift wasn't just a car, it was validation, proof that she was the chosen one, the golden child. My mug wasn't just a mug, it was a declaration that I would always be the shadow. The unfair gift divide isn't about materialism, it's about perception. It's about sitting in a room and realizing that the measure of your worth has just been displayed for everyone to see. Even the smallest children understand it instinctively. The sibling who unwraps the flashy, expensive toy is crowned the winner of the day, while the one who gets socks or stationery learns early on that they are expected to smile and pretend the imbalance doesn't sting. As adults, we mask the discomfort with laughter, jokes, or polite thank yous, but the divide is still there, gnawing quietly beneath the surface. On that Christmas morning, I wasn't just comparing objects. I was comparing futures, identities, and the way each of us had been silently categorized. The moment stretched as if time slowed down. My sister squealed with delight, the family rushed out to admire the car, and I sat behind, staring at the mug that declared I had already peaked before I had even started. No one noticed the stillness in my hands or the way my smile faltered. They were too busy cheering, too distracted by the shine of the car keys. That's the cruelty of the unfair gift divide. Its impact goes unseen by those who benefit from it. To them, the day is perfect, everything is joyful, but for the one left holding less, the memory curdles into something darker, something unforgettable. And so the divide becomes more than just one holiday morning. It becomes a symbol that sticks in your mind, replaying itself every time you sip from that mug, every time you see your sibling drive past in the car. The divide is no longer about gifts. It becomes a reminder of where you stand, of how invisible or undervalued you can feel in a place that is supposed to be safe and fair. It is the kind of moment that can harden, that can twist into rivalry, and that can turn a family gathering into the start of something far more personal. The symbolism of the mug is where everything transforms from being a simple Christmas disappointment into something heavier, more lasting, and almost poetic in its cruelty. On the surface, a mug is harmless, functional, even cozy. It's the sort of gift you give to coworkers, distant relatives, or acquaintances when you don't know them well enough to buy something meaningful. It's safe, neutral, forgettable. But this mug was not that. This mug carried a message, bold black letters printed across its glossy surface like a verdict written in stone. I peaked in the womb. That single sentence changed the meaning of the gift entirely. It turned a practical object into an insult wrapped in ceramic, a daily reminder that I was being reduced to a punchline in my own family's holiday narrative. The words themselves cut sharper than most people would realize at first glance. I peaked in the womb isn't just a joke. It's an erasure of potential, a declaration that whatever I might accomplish or hope for in life, none of it would ever live up to some supposed golden moment before birth. It suggests stagnation, wasted years, a life already judged and found wanting. Every sip from that mug, every glance at those words, would carry the same sting, a mocking reminder that my existence was being summarized as a decline rather than a journey. While my sister was being handed keys to her future, I was being handed a symbol that told me mine had already expired. Objects carry weight beyond their physical form. We attach meaning to them, we let them reflect our identities, and we allow them to symbolize our place in the world. A mug is used daily, a constant presence in the rituals of morning coffee, late-night tea, or moments of stillness at the kitchen table. By giving me this particular mug, my family didn't just give me something to drink from, they gave me something I would see again and again, a message that would follow me into every mundane routine, whispering that I had peaked before I even began. It wasn't just a joke at Christmas, it was a brand, an identity marker, something meant to define me in a way that was both dismissive and cruel. The contrast between my sister's gift and mine was amplified by this symbolism. A car is the ultimate symbol of independence, status, and progress. It takes you places, opens opportunities, gives you freedom. It represents motion, advancement, and growth. My sister's car was a gift that carried all of those connotations, and by extension, a declaration of her worthiness of such things. My mug, in comparison, wasn't simply small, it was negative. It didn't just lack opportunity, it actively mocked me. While her gift told a story of forward motion, mine told a story of decline, of a peak I would never surpass. Together, these gifts weren't just unequal, they created a narrative of superiority and inferiority, chosen and overlooked, future and failure. Symbolism doesn't always need to be intentional to leave an impact. Maybe the giver thought it was funny, quirky, or lighthearted. Maybe they believed it was harmless humor, the kind of joke families make to keep things playful. But jokes often reveal truths, and humor often masks sharpness. The mug didn't exist in a vacuum. It came in the same moment as my sister's car, and the juxtaposition magnified its message. If my sister had also received something small, maybe I could have laughed it off. If I had received something neutral, I might have brushed it aside. But when one child receives mobility and validation, and the other receives a ceramic insult, the humor curdles, leaving behind only bitterness and humiliation. The mug became a mirror, reflecting back the way I was seen, or at least the way my worth was prioritized. It wasn't about the actual object, it was about what it stood for. Every time I held it, I wasn't just drinking from a cup, I was holding proof of how unbalanced things had become. It wasn't just a funny phrase, it was a message carved into the fabric of family dynamics, a reinforcement of the idea that I was the one to laugh at, the one to joke about, the one to dismiss. Symbolism has power precisely because it lingers, because it stretches far beyond the initial moment of exchange and seeps into the everyday, turning ordinary routines into constant reminders of deeper wounds. Even in the act of being used, the mug carried its sting. Unlike the car, which would gleam in the driveway and be celebrated in photographs, the mug was intimate, tucked into my hand in quiet moments. It would show up in the morning, when the day was still forming, whispering the same words before anything else had a chance to. It would reappear at night, when everything slowed down, reminding me again that I had supposedly peaked long ago. It was the kind of symbolism that doesn't shout, but instead seeps into the cracks of daily life until it becomes inseparable from how you see yourself. The cruel brilliance of it was in its permanence. A car will eventually break down, lose its shine, or be replaced. But the mug, small and sturdy, was built to last. Its message would outlive trends, holidays, or fleeting celebrations. It wasn't flashy, but it was enduring. And in its endurance, the symbolism grew heavier, not lighter. Each time I saw it, the words carved themselves deeper, not fading into the background, but becoming sharper with repetition. Over time, the mug wasn't just an object anymore. It became a statement about identity, about place, about the invisible hierarchy that existed within my family. It was no longer a gift. It was a reminder, a brand, a scar disguised as a joke. Sibling rivalry intensified the moment the gifts were revealed. Rivalry between siblings is nothing new. It lurks quietly in the background of childhood, appearing in small competitions over grades, attention, or who gets the bigger slice of cake. It usually simmers in playful teasing or subtle comparisons, but on that Christmas morning, the rivalry was no longer subtle. It was pulled into the spotlight, broadcast for everyone to see in the form of a gleaming new car and a mug that practically sneered at me. Suddenly, the divide between us wasn't invisible anymore. It had a physical presence, parked in the driveway and sitting heavy in my hands, a rivalry made tangible through gifts that couldn't have been more different. What made it sting wasn't just that my sister's gift was better, it was that her gift symbolized triumph, while mine symbolized defeat. She stood beside her car, glowing with pride as family members gathered around, cheering and taking pictures. The camera flashes caught her smile, the shine of the car's paint, the bow stretched across the hood like a victory banner. I stayed in the living room, holding the mug that seemed to mock me with its cruel inscription. She was being celebrated while I was being dismissed. Rivalry feeds on moments like these, when one sibling is lifted high and the other is left to sink quietly in the background. Sibling rivalry is rarely about the actual object or achievement, it's about the validation attached to it. She wasn't just handed a car, she was handed proof that she was seen as deserving, trustworthy, and important. I wasn't just handed a mug, I was handed a label, one that reduced me to a joke. The imbalance of validation fanned the flames of rivalry, because it wasn't just about her winning, it was about me losing in front of everyone. A rivalry that had always been silent suddenly had fuel, and that fuel was public humiliation. Growing up, there had always been small comparisons. She was the one praised for being responsible, the one admired for her accomplishments, the one the family spoke about with pride. I was the one who was teased for being laid back, told I didn't take things seriously, often reminded to try harder. These roles had been quietly assigned over the years, but on that Christmas, the roles were cemented. The car was a crown on her head, and the mug was a stamp on mine. In one moment, the unspoken hierarchy became undeniable, and rivalry sharpened into something more serious. The setting itself added weight to the rivalry. Holidays are supposed to bring families together, to level the playing field with joy and generosity. Instead, this holiday became a stage where the rivalry was not just felt but performed. My sister's victory was witnessed, photographed, and celebrated by everyone in the room. My loss was equally visible, though brushed aside with laughter, as if being made the punchline of the day was something I should accept with grace. Rivalry thrives in these public moments because they are not easy to forget. Long after the tree is taken down and the wrapping paper is gone, the memory of who stood triumphant and who was left humiliated lingers, replaying in the mind like a scene etched into film. The rivalry also grew in silence, in the things that weren't said. No one stopped to acknowledge the imbalance. No one noticed the weight of the mug in my hands or the way my smile faltered. The family moved outside to admire the car, leaving me behind. That silence spoke louder than words. It told me that I was expected to accept the role I had been given without complaint. Rivalry deepens not just because of what is given to one sibling, but because of the neglect shown to the other. When no one steps in to balance the scales, the rivalry grows unchecked, festering in the quiet corners of memory. Even in the days after, the rivalry didn't fade. Every time she drove the car, it was like a victory lap. Each turn of the key reminded me of the moment I was left with nothing but a mug that declared my life already peaked. Every sip from that mug reinforced the rivalry, as though each morning I was forced to re-enter the competition and relive the defeat. Rivalry is kept alive not by one grand moment alone, but by the way that moment repeats itself, stretching into the everyday until it becomes part of the rhythm of life. What made the rivalry sharper was the imbalance of symbolism. Her gift represented freedom, adulthood, and growth. Mine represented failure, ridicule, and stagnation. It wasn't just that she had more, it was that her gift elevated her while mine dragged me down. Rivalry doesn't intensify just because one sibling is favored, it intensifies because the other is diminished. That imbalance doesn't create a simple comparison, it creates a hierarchy, a system where one sibling rises while the other is forced to serve as the punchline. The rivalry became more than just a competition between us, it became a lens through which I saw every interaction afterward. Each praise she received seemed louder. Each accomplishment she made seemed brighter. Each joke at my expense seemed sharper. The gifts that Christmas morning didn't just widen the gap between us, they turned the gap into a chasm, one that I felt I would have to cross every time I wanted to prove myself. Rivalry stops being about sibling playfulness when it turns into a battle for recognition, for fairness, for the right to exist without being reduced to a joke. In that way, the rivalry became self-sustaining. Every glance at the mug reminded me of the car. Every mention of her car reminded me of the mug. They became tethered together, symbols of a rivalry that had shifted from playful competition into something that gnawed at me constantly. And though gifts are supposed to bring joy, these two gifts became weapons, fueling a rivalry that grew sharper each time the memory replayed. Christmas morning betrayal does not announce itself with loud words or sudden outbursts. It arrives quietly, wrapped in glossy paper and tied with shiny bows, concealed under the guise of family tradition and celebration. The betrayal is not in the act of receiving a gift, but in what that gift represents, in the silent declarations made through the choices of what one sibling receives compared to the other. On that morning, betrayal appeared in the form of a lopsided exchange, my sister stepping outside to find a new car parked in the driveway, while I sat holding a mug that read, "I peaked in the womb." It was not just a mismatch of presents, it was a revelation, a moment that drew a line between us and left me stranded on the wrong side. The betrayal began with the anticipation, the kind that makes hearts race as paper tears and boxes open. There is a sacredness to Christmas morning, a belief that what awaits under the tree carries not just material worth, but emotional significance. Each package feels like a message, a reflection of how well you are known, how deeply you are valued. That's what makes betrayal so piercing in this context, when the message inside the wrapping paper is not love or appreciation, but dismissal or mockery. The moment I saw the car, gleaming in the driveway with its oversized bow, I understood instantly that the scale had tipped. The air filled with cheers, laughter, and excitement, but behind all that noise was the quiet weight of being overlooked, minimized, betrayed by the very people who were supposed to make the day feel whole. Betrayal on Christmas is not loud anger, but the stillness of being left behind. My sister's gift became the centerpiece of the day, the object around which everyone gathered, their voices rising in admiration and joy. My gift became an afterthought, a joke, something waved off with laughter as though its sting should not matter. That was the core of the betrayal, the expectation that I would smile, nod, and laugh along, even as the message carved itself into me. It was not the mug alone, but the silence that followed it, the lack of recognition that the imbalance was cruel, the refusal to see that giving one sibling freedom and validation while giving the other mockery was more than just unfair, it was wounding. The betrayal was compounded by the performance of celebration. Cameras flashed as my sister posed with her car, her joy frozen in photographs that would be revisited for years. I lingered in the background, holding the mug in my hand, a prop in a play where I had been cast as the comic relief. No one asked for a picture of me with my gift. No one paused to notice that while she held keys to her future, I held a punchline written in ceramic. That's what betrayal does. It isolates, it makes you invisible, even when you are sitting in the same room as everyone else. There is something particularly sharp about betrayal that happens within a family. Strangers can wound you, but betrayal from family cuts deeper because it breaks the illusion of safety. Christmas is supposed to be the ultimate symbol of togetherness, generosity, and love, but when betrayal enters the room, it twists the meaning of the holiday. What should have been a day of shared joy became a day of comparison, division, and humiliation. The betrayal wasn't in the objects themselves, but in what they stood for. One sibling lifted up, celebrated, adored, while the other was dismissed, mocked, and expected to laugh at their own expense. The quiet cruelty of Christmas morning betrayal is how it lingers long after the day is done. The car in the driveway was not just a one-time event, it became a lasting reminder, visible every time my sister drove off with her windows down, music playing, freedom hers to enjoy. The mug was not just a Christmas trinket, it was something that sat in the kitchen cupboard, resurfacing in daily routines, forcing me to face the same message again and again. Each time I poured coffee into it, each time I washed it and set it back on the shelf, the betrayal repeated itself, subtle but steady, etching itself deeper. What makes betrayal on Christmas particularly brutal is the collision of expectation and reality. You expect joy, fairness, warmth, and celebration. You expect that love will be evenly distributed, that the effort to make everyone feel valued will be clear in the gifts chosen. When that expectation is shattered, the disappointment is not mild, it is profound. It is not just about receiving less, it is about being told, in the most symbolic way possible, that your worth is less. That realization takes the holiday, a day that should be sacred, and stains it with bitterness that is hard to wash away. Even the laughter carried the flavor of betrayal. The mug was presented as a joke, something meant to be funny, something I was expected to chuckle at along with everyone else. But jokes can be barbed, humor can be sharp, and beneath the laughter was the clear message that I was the one to laugh at, not with. Betrayal often hides behind humor, disguised as something harmless, but when the laughter fades, the sting remains. That mug wasn't just a light-hearted gag, it was a reminder that I was seen as less, and the betrayal lay in the fact that no one around me seemed to notice the cruelty in it. Betrayal thrives in contrast, and that morning, the contrast could not have been more brutal. On one side, a new car, a chorus of cheers, a spotlight of pride. On the other side, a mug, laughter at my expense, and the silence of being overlooked. The betrayal wasn't about envy of her gift, but about the message delivered in the comparison. One sibling was validated, the other dismissed. One was seen, the other ignored. The car and the mug were not just gifts, they were symbols of how love, respect, and value had been divided, and the betrayal lay in realizing just how unequal that division had become. The birth of petty revenge begins in the small moments, in the sting of being overlooked, in the quiet realization that no one else noticed or cared about the imbalance. When you sit holding a mug that mocks you while your sister is being celebrated for receiving a brand new car, something shifts. It is not a loud eruption of anger, but a spark, a quiet flicker that settles deep inside. Petty revenge doesn't come from the desire to destroy. It comes from the desire to even the scales, to reclaim dignity in whatever small ways are available. It grows from humiliation, from being made the punchline, from the expectation that you will smile and play along while your worth is diminished. In that moment, while everyone else laughed, I imagined how satisfying it would feel to flip the script, to create small disruptions that would chip away at her perfect celebration. Petty revenge lives in the details, in the thought of hiding the car keys just long enough to frustrate her, of smudging the shine of the new paint with a careless swipe, of watching her joy dim ever so slightly. It doesn't aim to ruin, it aims to remind her and everyone else that the imbalance was seen, felt, and not forgotten. Petty revenge is born not from hatred but from wounded pride. It is the instinct to fight back without declaring war, to make subtle moves that restore a sense of balance when words or fairness fail. The mug became more than just a gift. It became fuel, a daily reminder that inspired small fantasies of clever retaliation. Perhaps using the mug as a prop in sarcastic performances, exaggerating my role as the family's comic relief until the joke turned uncomfortable for them instead of me. Perhaps turning every car ride into an opportunity to comment on how spoiled she was, dripping sarcasm with every word until the shine of her gift dulled. The birth of petty revenge is almost inevitable in moments of sharp disparity. When one sibling is lifted high and the other is left mocked, the desire to reclaim ground does not vanish. It transforms, it finds expression in tiny acts, in subtle words, in plans whispered only to oneself. It may never grow into full-blown vengeance, but its roots take hold in that very moment of imbalance, waiting for the perfect chance to remind the world that humiliation does not go unanswered. The inevitable showdown is the natural climax of rivalry, betrayal, and the simmering pettiness that builds in silence. It doesn't happen right away, not while the wrapping paper still litters the floor and the car keys gleam in her hand. It builds slowly, carried forward by each repeated reminder of the imbalance. Every time she honks that horn, every time she pulls into the driveway with music blaring, every time the family gushes about how lucky she is, the tension thickens. The mug waits quietly in the cupboard, whispering its cruel message each morning, feeding the growing desire for confrontation. The showdown begins not with raised voices, but with small cracks in politeness, the sarcasm that slips into casual conversation, the sharp edge in what was once playful teasing. The inevitable part comes from the fact that no one can swallow injustice forever. A rivalry sharpened by humiliation doesn't stay buried, it festers until it finds release. The showdown may take the form of an explosive argument during a family dinner, when the unspoken resentment finally spills into words. It could erupt when she waves her car keys a little too smugly, and I snap, unable to bite back another retort. Or it may come in quieter form, a carefully crafted moment where the pettiness turns to strategy, where the mug becomes a symbol I wield instead of one I endure. Either way, the weight of imbalance demands a reckoning, and the pressure ensures it cannot be avoided. The inevitable showdown is not just sibling against sibling, it is the collision of all the emotions the family ignored. It is the point where silence breaks, where mockery stops being funny, and where roles that were carelessly assigned are suddenly challenged. She may argue that the mug was harmless, that the car was earned, that I am overreacting. I may argue that the joke was cruel, that the favoritism was obvious, that my humiliation was never acknowledged. The exact words may differ, but the core will always be the same. The imbalance has reached its limit, and the rivalry demands resolution. The inevitability is what makes the showdown so powerful. It isn't a question of if, but when, because once resentment takes root, it always grows toward confrontation. The mug and the car, bound together by symbolism and disparity, ensure that the moment of collision will come, whether in a burst of anger or in a slow, deliberate act of revenge.